Welcome back to the Wow Factor. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Mann. Managing a workforce that is largely deskless, mechanics, drivers, yard supervisors, it requires a unique blend of transparency and high-touch leadership. On this episode of the Wow Factor, we shift our focus from the assets on the lot to the people who actually move them. Jodie Stallins, the Director of People Operations at Warehouse on Wheels, leads the human capital strategy for a network that spans over 40 locations across North America. Under her leadership, WOW has been recognized as a best workplace multiple times, driven by a culture that prioritizes value like win together and people matter. I also must mention that over the past several months, I've taken you on a journey and pulled back the curtain on the Warehouse on Wheels locations, meeting with the leaders who keep the North American supply chain moving. Today, I get to interview a friend and a very close colleague. Jodie and I strategize and plan together almost every single day, so I get to see firsthand how her management leadership shapes this growing company. She's one of the best in the industry. Jodie Stallins, Director of People Operations. Welcome to the Factor.
Wow. Thanks, Mark. I'm glad to be here, and I hope to be able to live up to the hype. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we're going to navigate the role that people operations plays in this massively growing corporation, in this increasingly valuable industry. But first, I want everybody to get to know you and your team. So, Jodie, you've managed HR in sectors ranging from state government to building services. How did your journey lead you to become the people architect for a mobile storage corporation?
Yeah, well, that's a complex answer. But I started my career in office manager type of roles early on. After my daughter was born, I worked part-time until she started school. And then I was offered an office manager role by a woman who became my first real grown-up mentor. And that position had HR duties assigned to it. And we all know what that's like to wear many hats. And eventually that position evolved into full-time HR duties. And the rest of that's kind of history. My career hasn't always followed a straight line. But I've come to trust that each step has had a purpose, and I believe that God uses every season to teach us and prepare us. And that perspective has helped me appreciate how I arrived here at Warehouse on Wheels. At that specific time, I was in a position in which, quite frankly, I was miserable. And I got a phone call from a headhunter asking me if I knew anybody who might be interested in this role. And 6 weeks later, I was sitting in this chair. So looking back on that now, I can see how each one of those roles, especially the challenging ones, shaped how I lead today. I think there's purpose in that journey, and it's made me more grounded, empathetic, and intentional in this role. I've been blessed with many, many mentor leaders along the way who have poured into me, and I try to do the same for others as a result.
All of that really shapes the WOW mission. And you know, our mission is really to provide the most effective commercial mobile storage solutions. But from a people operations perspective, how do you translate that solution-oriented mission into a daily culture for our teams in the field?
Yeah, I think it really begins with our responsiveness to our customers, our customer being our internal team members. We have developed a reputation for not only being responsive when they call or email, even if it's just for us to say, we're looking into this and we'll get back to you, but then in turn providing them with an answer. Sometimes it isn't necessarily the answer that they want, but when that happens, we take the time to explain the why behind it. And I think that consistency has allowed us to develop respect from our team because they know we'll do what we say we'll do. And I don't take that responsibility lightly.
Yeah, you know, I've talked to a lot of GMs over the past several months who talk about, you know, the looking at trailer counts, getting up in the morning and looking at trailers in, trailers out. What customers do I have to work with today and meet with? And do I have the opportunity to help? What are the first three people metrics that you look at every morning to kind of take the pulse of the company, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that's a combination of several items, and they're all somewhat connected. First, I look at our open positions and our time to fill those positions. I also look at to see how our applicant pool is progressing or in some cases not progressing. One of our primary responsibilities, especially in our current state, is to support our general managers and our ops managers to allow them to focus on running their business. But if we're getting past a couple of weeks without solid applicants, I'm usually waving the yellow flag to bring attention and a sense of urgency around getting those filled. We'll huddle with those branch leaders for creative solutions to get them filled with the right people. I think next then is how many people are out on PTO at any given day. This can be an indicator of health at a local branch, though obviously there's exceptions to that around peak vacation times and such. But I look for patterns associated with those time off requests and anything that might signal potential issues at the local locations. And then last but not least, I look at who's celebrating birthdays and service anniversaries each day. It's important for leaders to be cognizant both of those milestones. I'm trying to be better about reaching out to those team members just to let them know that someone sees and acknowledges their special day.
So, Jodie, if you look at a team member roster, you'll notice very quickly that the folks who make this whole company run are the mechanics and drivers and painters and mobile techs. They're team members who don't sit at a computer all day. What is your specific engagement strategy for reaching that mechanic in Burlington, North Carolina, or the yard supervisor in Phoenix who isn't necessarily checking their company email every hour on the hour?
Yeah, I think it's the old saying, it takes a village. That's our overall approach to the engagement strategy. Engagement isn't just a manager responsibility or the senior leadership or the people operations department's responsibilities, although each of them are unique and important and have a role in it. It's more multifaceted, and that's the way that we approach those frontline team members who are not connected to a computer all day. Um, we use multiple methods, including our human capital management or payroll system, which fosters that use of peer-to-peer recognition and shout-outs. That is one of the pieces of culture that we've developed here at Warehouse on Wheels, of which I'm very, very proud. Then we have a monthly newsletter, which is another method for pushing out information and recognition. Several of our branches even take the newsletter and turn that into an information sharing board for their drivers and shop staff. We also have local liaisons at the larger branches who act as an extension of the people ops team by following up with those who aren't in front of email or computers, or maybe they just need extra assistance with tasks or training. And then finally, I also get the privilege of being out in the field periodically for branch visits. I'll take time to just sit down and have a pulse check with every team member at the location. We talk about it all. Right, the good, the bad, the ugly. I think this combined approach is the best answer to that.
Yeah, it sounds like you take a really challenging task and make it so easy. I mean, it really is.
I'm just really grateful for the leadership team that we have here. They have a sincere desire for our team members to feel heard and acknowledged, and it makes our job a lot easier.
We hold quarterly State of the Company meetings with our CEO, John Brooks, and great questions always come out of those meetings. I come out of them so fired up. What is the most challenging or insightful question in your role that an associate has asked recently that led to a real change in how Warehouse on Wheels operates?
Yeah, I think it's hard to narrow down to a specific question, but I will say this. Back to what I said previously about our leadership and their desire for our team members to feel heard and acknowledged. You referenced the state of the business, and I think one of the biggest changes in structure to the state of the business that we started about maybe a year and a half ago, I lose track of time now, is really bringing that feedback to those quarterly state of the business addresses. So when we gather that from our engagement surveys, those open-ended questions, a lot of times, or suggestions, are brought to the team in a collective manner, and different members of the senior leadership team will address those. Sometimes the answer to those questions or suggestions is yes, we will absolutely do that. And sometimes it's no, but here's why. And I think many times our team members respect the no answer as much as the yes one, simply because they know someone has heard their concerns and, most importantly, took the time to follow up with them. We use multiple approaches to this. Again, newsletters, some targeted messaging to certain groups, so general managers, operation managers, depending on the topic. And then again, the big one is this quarterly state of the business address. And again, I think that a lot of the no and here's why answers are received just as well, if not better, than the yes answers in that case.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's a sign that your culture is very strong. And that's a good thing. So just as GMs face space headaches, people ops leaders face talent headaches. What's the biggest hurdle currently facing recruiting in logistics or the trailer rental industry in 2026?
Yeah, so such a loaded question, but I think that the biggest hurdle facing us right now from a recruiting standpoint is this generational gap that exists in the talent pool. Just take drivers, for example. There's already a significant deficit in the number of open driver positions versus the number of candidates on the market. When you factor in that most of the younger CDL students are being taught on automatic transmissions, for example, it adds another level of challenge to the hiring of quality candidates, and even succession planning for our existing drivers. So I think that the talent shortage in general, though, I think that's the biggest hurdle for most people leaders that I know currently.
Yeah, one of our core values here, and I love it, is can-do attitude. How do you move beyond a resume to identify that specific grit and attitude during the interview process?
Well, I think it starts with the interview questions that we ask. Most people know that I like to take the black hat, or the devil's advocate, if you will, role. And it's easy for candidates to come to an interview prepared with discussing their accomplishments and their achievements. But then when I ask them a question like, tell me about a time when you didn't agree with a change being made and how'd you handle it? Or what was the last problem that you solved that wasn't technically assigned to you? Then we start to peel that onion back, engage those responses, and then you start to really uncover the attitude and grit that we were talking about.
WOW is an aggregation of many respected regional brands. It's almost like a melting pot, right? Bringing all these brands together under one umbrella. How do you manage the people operations of an acquisition to ensure a new team feels like they're part of the WOW family without losing their local identity that they maybe have known for years?
Acquisitions are a unique animal. And at Warehouse on Wheels, we've had a ton of experience with them. But I think to assimilate a newly acquired team into the corporate entity, and I'm using that in air quotes, it starts with putting myself in their position. Fortunately or unfortunately, I've been in their shoes more than once during my career. I've been a part of a company being acquired. And I know the uncertainty that comes with being that single mom and not knowing what new benefits are going to look like, or worse yet, not even knowing if I would have a job. So I use those feelings and memories to approach our acquisitions with a deeper sense of empathy and understanding. Fundamentally, it starts with developing relationships with people and hearing their stories about what's made the company successful. I mean, let's face it, we wouldn't be acquiring them if they hadn't been successful. I'm a firm believer in gleaning the good things and finding a way to implement them, because we don't have every single thing figured out, and only then easing them into the WOW culture in tangible ways that will benefit them.
The growth pattern for WOW is a long runway, right? We are moving toward a fleet of 40,000 plus units. How are you planning the people infrastructure to make sure that we have, the leadership pipeline to support that kind of a scale?
I am so glad you did not ask this as your first question. This is one of those things that keeps me awake at night. There's already been a fair amount of work being done in the backgrounds toward this effort. Foundational things like identifying success and what that looks like in each job description in the company, for example. And then identifying those high potential team members in specific roles by having an unbiased review of their performance and their growth potential. Fortunately for me, I know a guy, and that person just happens to head up our learning and development for the company. You and I collaborate seriously. In all seriousness, you and I do collaborate. We get those, have those conversations and get those hypos on career path trajectory for specific roles, which allows time for those team members' development in what I call this lull period. I also love that when a position is created or vacated, we've developed this culture at WOW in which the first question is always, do we have anybody internally that would be qualified or interested in this position? So that's, I think, where it starts.
Yeah, it's always looking for those hypos. Who do we have that's high potential right now that we can move around, right? And it's that also helps us maintain a positive culture. So there is kind of this turnover pandemic happening right now. The warehousing industry and the storage industry is facing a massive turnover challenge. What is one specific initiative you've implemented at Warehouse on Wheels that has successfully broken the cycle and kept our best people on the team?
Well, in typical fashion, I think there's multiple answers to this. I think we've done a really good job of gathering exit interview data from team members who are leaving the company. And we ask a lot of tough questions that cause us to reflect and evaluate management styles and practices that could be leading to some of our turnover. As I've said previously with the engagement survey feedback, it's not a matter of that information just sitting in a file somewhere. If it's actionable information, it's passed on to a GM or a regional manager, and that can lead to policy or practice changes. I think additionally, then we have open dialogue with our team members. I think that's a big factor. All of our locations are holding team meetings at some interval, whether it's weekly or biweekly. And that's led to those front-facing team members feeling more in the know with what's happening, not only in their own locations, but with the company in general. As you well know, when people feel that they're not included or in the know, many times they're left to conjure up their own narrative. So obviously there's tangible things like remaining competitive with pay and bonus structure and benefits that we're constantly analyzing to keep ahead of turnover. But solid culture is much more than just those things. It's the people.
Absolutely. It seems like a decade ago, but it was really only a year and a half or 2 years ago, we rebranded from American Trailer Rental Group to Warehouse on Wheels. How did you manage the internal rebrand, ensuring that every associate understood and really embraced the new identity and tagline, the right solution right now?
Well, in the what was I thinking column, not only were we managing the rebranding of the company during that time, but our team specifically was also transitioning from human resources to people operations. So yes, in a lot of ways, it's just semantics, but in others, it represented a new beginning of sorts. One of my unofficial goals has been to change people's perception of HR and the bad guys or company police to being people partners and a resource for our team members. And so we were managing a lot of change in that moment. I think the Warehouse on Wheels name was easy for most to accept because it felt more inclusive of all of North America and not just the U.S. But it was also more indicative of what we do as a company. So that piece of it, I think, was easier. Being the right solution right now has been more of an evolution, but it just keeps we just keep it in front of people's minds, and is usually the case, it has taken root.
Yeah, so you're building a softer, gentler people ops there at Warehouse on Wheels, but when a location does face a crisis, like a natural disaster, or a tornado blows several trailers over, or a major operational shift happens, how does people operations show up in those first 48 hours to support the local team?
Mark, these are obviously situations that no people leader wants to face, but they're certainly inevitable at some point. The example that comes to my mind immediately was in February of 2023. We had a team member pass away at a fairly newly acquired location. We were still in the integration stages with the team, the get to know you stage, if you will. But we immediately had someone present at that location to show the company and our compassion and support for what the team was processing. We weren't there to fix anything. We were just there to be emotional support and listen. And I think it established the foundation of, wow, these people really do care in that moment.
Let's switch gears and talk about the people on the ground. We want our people to grow with us. How does the WOW Academy, WOW University identify a high potential mechanic or coordinator and prepare them to potentially become a future general manager?
I can't say enough about the excellence of the WOW Academy in our learning and development program. Often when I'm at conferences with my colleagues, I hear horror stories of how companies only give lip service to career development, but here it's ingrained as part of our culture.
Yeah, it really is excellent, and it's so much fun to work with you guys, and just to see the light bulb go off, in the eyes of our associates, when they get it. No company's perfect. We absolutely do it right, and most of our locations are the best of the best, and we run a well-oiled machine. But think of a general manager or a location who was struggling with team morale. How did a specific people operations intervention kind of quietly make that GM's job easier and more productive?
Yeah, I love this question. It's an area of which my team is very passionate. We have a leader who had been struggling with staffing issues at their location. They found themselves in a situation of, I just don't know what else to do. We had an open and honest conversation with him. And fortunately, that person is very humble and sincerely wanted direction and was open to entering into a monthly coaching session with us. During those sessions, we discuss various best practices and reinforce those behaviors of strong leaders. And it's led to improvements in their hiring decisions, leading to less turnover. It's instilled more confidence in that individual. Supporting our GMs and ops managers is a top priority for my team.
Yeah, several times a year, we evaluate our DEI and wellness programs. As a matter of fact, the first few months of this year, there's been a big wellness push coming from the people ops team. Can you share a moment when direct feedback from a frontline associate led to a major improvement in our benefits or safety protocols?
Yeah, I would say late in 2024, we were evaluating our benefit renewals in the U.S., just like a lot of other companies. And we were looking at a significant increase in our health insurance premiums with our incumbent provider at the time. The broker that we're working with garnered a deal with another carrier for significantly less than the original quote. And we made that switch in January of 2025. And almost immediately, we began to receive feedback from our team members that their existing prescription costs had significantly increased. In some cases, that was more than 200%, which was a lot. And so I immediately engaged John, our CEO, and we got creative with some solutions for our team members and ultimately moved back to our previous medical provider for this plan year in 2026. I think it's often easy for people to lose sight of the fact that my team and I, along with other leaders in the company, we're carrying the same insurance benefits. So we have just as much of a vested interest in that and are impacted by those issues as well.
Yeah, it's nice to go to the dentist and have them say, you don't owe anything today, right?
Right.
All right, let's stick with the topic of cost because I want you to kind of take off your people ops hat and put on a CFO hat real quick. Um, let's get into the math. So if a CEO or CFO asked for the whiteboard math on the true cost of turnover in a yard operation or at a location, what are the hidden expenses you would highlight beyond just recruiting fees?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. Conservative estimates are that cost is somewhere in the 30%, 30 to 50% of the salary range. Others estimate it to be more in the 100 to 200% of the salary range. Personally, I think it's somewhere in the middle of the two, especially when you take into context the intangible factors of training time for the replacement, missed revenue, potential delayed customer response time, safety risks, the burden to other team members of carrying additional responsibilities, the hit to morale, and on it goes.
Yeah. So, how do you provide the financial return on investment of initiatives like, the state of the business meeting or the GM summits or recognition programs to a leadership team whose focus is on EBITDA and fleet utilization?
Well, I think the results speak for themselves. When I look at those locations who have higher engagement, I see leaders who are focused on relationship building with their team members. I see leaders who are putting forth the effort to meet individually with team members who are interested in them, not as a means to an end, but as a whole person with a family and struggles and stressors and who have lives outside of Warehouse on Wheels. Those foundational relationships lead to trust building, which in turn leads to can-do mindset. And when that 100-trailer order comes in and they know they're going to be working overtime for their foreseeable future to get that customer taken care of, that's the intangible ROI of engagement.
Absolutely agree. So, gonna switch gears again here for just a second. We have a lot of folks listening in on the podcast across the country, actually across North America, who may not even work for a storage or warehouse industry, but I think they can learn a lot from you and your experience. So if there's a local manager out there that is seeing their team disengage, what is the first step you would tell them to take this afternoon even to turn that around?
I think that people instinctively see the dirty or the grimy piece of trailer rentals. And while it's true, it is very blue collar in nature, there's also a very human piece that can't be overlooked. Our team's philosophy is that people are people regardless of the industry. They want to be paid correctly. They want their benefits to work, especially when they need them. And they want to be appreciated. That's where people operations really rises to the occasion because collectively we get a lot of satisfaction in making that happen for our team members.
Yeah, we revisit our core values every year. I mean, we're constantly talking about it. In the GM meeting yesterday, John Brooks went through again. These are our core values. These are the things we hold dear. What's a simple culture audit any leader can perform on their own shop to see if they're actually living out the values?
Yeah, my immediate answer to that is just talk to your people. Um, Ask them questions. Ask them how I'm meeting your needs. How am I not meeting your needs? What do you need from me? What can I do to make your life better? It's not rocket science. It's pretty simple.
All right, Jody, it's time for the signature round. Right, we're going to get personal a little bit here. Um, Looking past the title, what is the specific moment in your career when you realized, yeah, human resources is not just a department. This is the little literal engine that makes a company run, and this is my world. I'm in it.
Yeah, I think it's been, to my earlier point, it's been progressive over time. I can't narrow it down to one specific moment. I can tell you that I've gleaned a lot of bad examples, and that's led me to the seat that I sit in now, which has been one of the best yes decisions I've ever made in my career, if not in my life. Don't tell my husband or my kids that, but definitely been one of the best yeses that I've ever made. And so I think that having that dramatically opposite example of what I didn't want to be, and having it modeled on the day to day here has been a game changer for me.
You really are the champion of balanced life and the value that, we need to respect our time outside of work. So let me ask you, when you shut down your office there in Evansville, what is the one thing that helps you reset so you can show up at 100% for the WOW team the next day?
Well, we have a blended family of three adult children and three very active grandsons in various stages and ages in life. And I would say 5,000% it's engaging with our kids and our grandsons. And, um, our hobbies are chasing them around to their activities. And that's what keeps me grounded and focused and centered.
I am so impressed with the number of folks I have interviewed here at WOW who have that same answer, kids or grandkids. That is their reset button. Um, and you can't ask for a better one, I think.
That's right.
Think back to the best boss or mentor you ever had. What's the one thing they said to you that you now find yourself repeating to your team there in Evansville?
Oh gosh. I don't know if it's one thing that I necessarily repeat. I would say it's something actionable that I try to emulate. And that is to be a role model and a mentor to other women leaders. I had my first grown up mentor that I referenced earlier was a woman who was a very strong HR leader. Um, and it inspired me to want to mentor other women leaders, not just in the realm of HR, but just in general.
All right, two more questions for you. All right, two big ones. What is one myth about the storage trailer industry that you hope we can retire after this episode?
I think that it's more around educating people that there is actually a market out there for storage trailers. When I talk to applicants and tell them what we do, I always give them the analogy of just like at home when you have too much stuff or junk and you go take out a storage unit to put some of your overflow stuff in. That's what we do for commercial customers. And so I get the privilege of being able to educate people, whether they come to work for us or not, that there's this market out there. And it's just a small piece of what we do to market our business, but it's a good mission field for me.
All right, last question. If I take a quick look at LinkedIn, I see several open positions, including some leadership positions. For anyone out there listening who might be interested in joining the highly engaged and growing team here at Warehouse on Wheels, what's one thing they can do today?
Yeah, we're certainly feeling the burden of servicing our locations well and fulfilling their staffing needs. So I encourage anyone to apply on our career page of our website. It's warehouseonwheels.com, and then you can select careers at the bottom of the page. Or they can also email a resume to POPS, P-O-P-S, so people operations at Wow Trailers.
Excellent. And one benefit they get almost immediately is they get to work with you and me, right?
That's true. That is true.
All right. Jodie Stallins, Director of People Operations at Warehouse on Wheels. Thanks for showing us the wow factor in people ops.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm Mark Mann, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Wow Factor.
The wow factor.